Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the View from the Clipper podcast. I'm your host, James Warner, as always, joined by my co-host, Josh Sexton. Josh, how are you doing this afternoon?
Feeling good, like I would say apprehensively good about the game that's coming tonight. I've kind of like I felt myself almost internally realigning my expectations of where the Clippers are at in the past few weeks. But obviously that's all been without Isaiah Jackson. It sounds like he's going to be back for this game without a sort of official injury report to go off. So scrap all of that. The Clippers are definitely going to win, and then they're going to upset the OKC Thunder in the first round. So I don't know if you want to leave the podcast there, James, or if you want to tell us how you're
We're calling it
feeling.
here. We're calling it here, Josh. You don't need to record anymore because, yeah, I think you might have hit the nail on the head there. But unfortunately we've got some more digging to do, Josh, because there are many different scenarios that could play out. Obviously, tonight's game, we're recording on the 15th. Clippers are obviously due to play the Warriors. I think it was, I think last week, right, we were talking about the Portland Trail Blazers. We had that super important game where whoever won the matchup would essentially secure the opportunity to play the Phoenix Suns in the play-in and secure that that opportunity. And unfortunately, the Clippers lost, and that was super disappointing. I think we were both decently optimistic, but wary of the fact that the Blazers had previously destroyed us, and in quite an embarrassing way. Clippers ended up in a very similar fashion. I wouldn't say embarrassed. It didn't feel as embarrassing. Like it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a game where, you know, I think the Port Trailblazers continued to play their game, and the Clippers just in the whole couldn't really keep up with them, other than like pulling, I think, the game back in sort of the late third quarter. But it wasn't as embarrassing as the previous matchup, but it was again just super disappointing for them to drop that game, like another big opportunity, and for them to drop both of them has me a little bit worried. I think now, having to face the Warriors, we've fortunately got the opportunity to sort of almost preview that game. We obviously played the Warriors in the last game of the season. The Clippers didn't have Kawhi Leonard, so how much can you read into that? I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm really interested to get your thoughts firstly on that Blazers performance, Josh, because obviously that was the game that ultimately has put us in the position where we're now coming into tonight in an elimination playing game. So
Yeah, it was just tough, wasn't it? And I think when we were analysing the game ahead of it last time, sort of previewing it, um, we were, I guess, like cautiously optimistic, but only in a way because like we felt like the sample size of what we'd seen from this team, even with like obvious roster holes, which of course we talked about. Like we talked about the fact that the runway had sort of run out for this Clippers team in terms of the ability to find the right rotations and things like that. But we felt like they'd maybe nailed the rotation in so much as they kind of like could before the Portland
mhm.
game. So to basically see, as you referenced, and like I think you were right. Like I think you kind of almost like backpedaled on it a little bit, but like you were right to say like it just was a very similar game to first time around against Portland, and that's where, as I say before, like that sort of internal realignment of expectations I've had is that going into the second Portland game, I was like, oh, maybe the first Portland game just a one-off. Like again, the sample size of what we've seen from the team, I think, suggests that we're just as good as a team like Portland. And actually, what I think kind of happened after watching that second Portland game is I was like, oh, actually, no, this Portland team is just a little bit ahead of us at the moment. Doesn't mean I think they can necessarily get like a upset against the San Antonio Spurs or anything. Like I'm still aware of where Portland are at, and I'm still aware of where we're at. They've just obviously had more time to sort of like work on that roster as a group together, and there aren't the holes because they've not made like big trades during the season and stuff in the same way that we have. But Golden State Warriors are kind of in a similar position to that, and I think you saw a bit of that on Sunday night, really, where even without Kawhi Leonard, we were able to win that game and win it like fairly comfortably. Like I know the scoreline doesn't sort of seem comfortable in the end, and there were moments in the game where it was like the Clippers are kind of letting go of the rope a little bit here. But I think you can expect that for one when you're without your star player, but also, when the roster is kind of currently constructed in the way it is. But there was loads more from that to be sort of reassured by. A good Benedict Mathurin game, for example, was one of the things I sort of took away as like, I'm really hanging on to that. Bogdanovic suddenly coming back into the rotation and looking every bit of the old Bogdanovic was like, really encouraging to see. But it felt like both teams really kind of approached it very cautiously. Like you see that in how deep both rotations were. You see it in the amount of
Yeah.
minutes that everyone gets, which is like, on the whole, not a lot really. I think Benedict Mathurin was our, just trying to check now. Oh yeah, 32 minutes. Benedict Mathurin was our sort of the player who played the most minutes. So yeah, like I guess if you're looking at it over the course of a week as a whole, it's kind of encapsulates the Clippers roller coaster of this season, doesn't it? But yeah, from that Portland game, I definitely came away just a little bit like frustrated that it did feel like it really set us maybe just back as fans rather than like us back as a franchise in terms of like I thought the team were probably closer to Portland than they were, and then having been on the receiving end of like a very similar like battering to what the first one was, it did just kind of make me go like, oh okay, well like I really hope we don't have to play them in the play-in, and fortunately, we're now in a situation where we know that we don't. So, as I said before, all the optimism is kind of starting to flow back through me a little bit in a way that it probably wasn't after the Portland game the other night.
Yeah, I had a keen eye on the Portland Suns game from was it last night or the night before?
Last night, yeah.
Um, Last night that I was just like, please don't give us the opportunity to play this Portland Trailblazers team because I think in our preview of that Portland game to in order to secure that sort of first round playing spot against the Suns, we sort of said like they need to clean up rebounding. That was even the messaging coming from the team. That was I felt like the reason we'd lost a couple weeks back to the Blazers, where that game was of equal importance and was at Intuit Dome. And for me, that why I said that game felt more embarrassing is just because like the rebounds, it was just so evident from the numbers that the Clippers were just not able to grab anything. It just felt like every time the Blazers missed a shot, they'd get another opportunity, and more than likely they would make it because Drew Holiday was just on one. I think in this game, it definitely seemed like they cleaned that up, and that's why I sort of saw the game through like a little bit of a different lens. But I was sort of just looking again at the box score and in terms of just finding like that X factor of what the difference was. And yeah, on the night, 35 free throw attempts for the Blazers, just 12 for the Clippers. And the Clippers have been in terms of the overall sum of the season, and James Harden is probably plays a big role in that, have been one of the better teams at getting to the line, but to get to the line 12 times and for that to come from just four players is obviously just not good enough. Maybe that focus on rebounding meant that they were maybe less attentive to other areas of their game in terms of their aggression in trying to score, but also trying to slow down the Blazers. Kelly just couldn't live with their physicality, their aggression. Yeah, Denny Avdiya getting to the line 13 times and making 12 is like, just could not handle him. Which I don't think we're going to get that tonight against the Warriors. Warriors obviously play a completely different style of basketball. They have very different profiles of players. So I feel more comfortable from that regard. And yeah, it was just really, really disappointing. And ultimately, the game lived at the line for the Blazers. And I guess sometimes you have to accept those. They were at home. I think we did say like going to the Northwest and playing the Blazers in such a big game on the road is going to be tricky for the Clippers. I didn't feel like it had like the playoff atmosphere that I was expecting, but it was like the crowd were definitely behind the team, and with like the way their season has gone, I think both teams really wanted this one, but the Blazers obviously just come out on top and they just had the whistle. I haven't watched the game back since I watched it on the morning after, but yeah, I think they were definitely more aggressive at getting to the line, and definitely lived through Denny Avdiya, and we didn't really have anyone to really compete with that. I mean, Benedict Mathurin had been the guy for us who maybe you could argue had been someone who'd been super aggressive in terms of his ability to get to the bucket and maybe draw fouls. That for me has been like the big thing I've been enjoying in his game since he's come to the Clippers, and offered something I would say is a little different because, other than Darius Garland, who went to the line 4 times, it was only really Kawhi Leonard and Derrick Jones Jr., Jordan Miller, and those are all players who I'd say are guys who can get to the line. So Benedict Mathurin playing 5 minutes. I mean, we spoke about it last week as well, but I know that he's just been quite disappointing as of late. I think fortunately enough had a decent game against the Warriors, so maybe that's promising. Maybe he just can't. It doesn't match up well with the Blazers. Maybe the Blazers just can play against him easier than other teams. But I was quite disappointed by that. But it's one we can quickly move on from because fortunately Josh we ain't got to play the Blazers again, and I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful
Very.
for that. Yeah, which is why I said last night I was keeping a keen eye on that Suns Phoenix game. It's gonna be the Phoenix Suns who await either the Clippers or Warriors, and yeah, all attention turns to tonight, Josh. So obviously, like I said, we had that preview with the Warriors. How much of that game can you take into tonight, and also how like Clippers have found success against the Warriors, albeit I think maybe last time out before the last game of the season, maybe were obviously have been facing their own injury issues, right? With Jimmy Butler out, is out tonight as well. Steph Curry out for a large period of time. They didn't know if he was going to come back. Obviously, he came back against the Clippers. Looked kind of Curry-esque, and that is still very scary when you're in a elimination scenario. And I think, yeah, you've also got to consider last year how the Clippers closed out the season against the Warriors as well, obviously, albeit as a different team. So, yeah, give me your thoughts on tonight, but also the final game of the season against the Warriors and what you can take from that.
Yeah, like again, it feels like a difficult game to kind of analyze because it was very end of the regular season vibes with two teams that felt like they were just like, well, I mean, they literally were, weren't they? Almost they were locked into their positions the minute we saw.
Yeah,
Even though Sacramento had a good go for us against Portland, that it kind of wasn't going to go Sacramento's way. We just kind of knew our fate. To be honest, I knew our fate from the minute.
yeah,
I mean, I can't remember what the biggest lead was from the Portland Clippers game. I know the Clippers came back to lead in the fourth quarter, which felt like a miracle, to be honest, for anybody who was watching it. But from the moment that Portland took a big lead, I think I was like resigned to the fact that we were going to be the ninth seed. So it did really have that end of the regular season vibes, like both teams kind of on the beach, to use like British football parlance. In terms of things you can take, like based on that, probably not a whole lot. Like a lot of the guys that I expect to play heavy minutes for the Warriors tonight just didn't play heavy minutes for the Warriors in that game. But you could say
yeah.
pretty much the same about the Clippers too. Obviously, Kawhi literally being completely out of the game, and I do expect him to play tonight. Um, like I'm hoping we can take a better Benedict Mathurin performance from the game. As you say, I think he's badly matched with Portland because Portland is better at defending without fouling, I think, than Golden State generally is. But I still imagine that Golden State, like when they're playing sort of playoff basketball almost, because that's what this is. I mean, at worst, you could call it postseason basketball, because I know these games kind of exist in a weird vacuum, don't they? But the
Mhm.
Warriors, I do expect to turn up and play postseason basketball in that way. So it'd be interesting to see sort of what they end up kind of, throwing at the Clippers in that sense to stop what we can do. I'd be interested to see who turns up from their roster because like I've got a friend who's a Warriors fan, and I was kind of saying to him the other day, the trouble is like I expect, maybe not expect, but I could see a world in which Steph goes off for like 50. But then like who is the secondary scorer within that? Like for a lot of the season, it's been like Brandon Pajemski, I think, but he's been really streaky and probably not had a season that he would be, overall very proud of, having stepped into a bigger role. There's Kristaps Porzingis there, but he's been dealing with like major health issues and stuff over the
Yeah.
course of the season. So I kind of don't know who that second guy is for the Warriors necessarily. Whereas like, even though it's maybe more likely because of the way Steph plays that he'll score 50 than it is that Kawhi would score 50, for example, even if Kawhi scored 30 or 40, we've got Darius Garland, who I expect could score 20 or 30 as well. Like we just have a roster that I think has got a little bit more top end talent while Jimmy Butler's on the sidelines for them. So I'm hoping the top end talent is what will carry the Clippers through. I hope that it doesn't sort of take depth for the Clippers to get through this game, because I think that's where the Clippers are just kind of lacking. Maybe we see more spark plug minutes from Bogdanovic if Ty Lue thinks that he's ready to offer that. I expect that we'll probably see less Nicholas Batum in this one, especially with Isaiah Jackson being back. And even though Nicholas Batum was great and sort of back to his old self against the Warriors in a way, I think it should kind of be like left at that. Like if tonight is the last game of the Clippers season, which obviously I really hope it isn't, then it'll be a great way for Nicholas Batum to have gone out to have played that last game against the Warriors and been good to kind of go out on a high. Not that I'm trying to write off his Clippers career there, but
No.
I just think the Clippers have got more pieces that are a bit more suited to the Clippers performing at the kind of level they're going to need to get through tonight. So. I am feeling confident in some ways. There's probably a part of me that doesn't necessarily trust that the holes in the roster won't expose themselves, but I don't think the Golden State Warriors are a team who can kind of pick away at them as much as a team like Portland could. Like Portland have obviously got all the energy and all the athleticism, and even within that, when you were saying like I think the Clippers kind of closed the gap in the rebound battle, like Portland still had two guys that were in double-digit rebounds, Donovan Clingan with 10 defensive rebounds, 13 overall, and Rob Williams with 10, and the Clippers had no one who was even in double digits, or even close to be honest. Like Kawhi had the most with 8. Our center Brook Lopez had 6. Like it's just never going to be enough to get you over the line against a team who is so young and athletic. But the Golden State Warriors are not that. They've got a couple of guys who I think are younger and a bit athletic, like a Will Richard or a G Santos or someone like that. But beyond that, like I expect that they probably play a couple more of the guys who kind of contribute more on the offensive end, like Pat Spencers and things like that, who are not necessarily athletic guys, even if they are sort of, less experienced. So I'm hoping that the Clippers turn up and give them, at the very least, sort of meet the game on its terms in a way that, maybe the Clippers have disappointed in a lot this season, where sometimes even this iteration of the roster have disappointed a lot this season is like a failure to meet the game ahead of them on its terms. But I think if they can do that tonight, and if they can go in with full focus, then there's no reason they can't win this game. And then there's no reason if they don't do the same against the Phoenix Suns in the second game as well, they couldn't, knock the Phoenix Suns off, because they're another team that, while they are younger and more athletic than the Clippers, they still have, roster flaws in the same way the Clippers do, and little sort of holes, because they're a team that's currently in transition like the Clippers are.
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck between like reading too much into how the Clippers have been playing recently, the rotations, and like playoff Clipper, like playoff Ty Lue, playoff Kawhi. Like I am kind of leaning towards like they are two different entities. And whilst I do think the Clippers have wanted to end the season as strong as possible, as we know, like particularly over the last few weeks, the last pods that we've recorded, like there have just been like guys in and out of the lineups. We had that like period of time after the trade where it felt like the group were coming together like quite well. I'm thinking back to like the last performance that really like got me excited about this group, which was the Timberwolves game where the Clippers put, was it 157 points against them. And I think since then, like it has been like really rocky. And I think like us as a fan base, anyone following the team, whether you're in the media or not, would agree like it has kind of changed people's perception of the team. And I kind of feel like we might see like that style of basketball again, or that level of performance to a degree, particularly tonight. And I would argue as well, and I completely agree with like against the Phoenix Suns, because this team is deep. They've got lots of people who can contribute. They've got a coach in Ty Lue who literally, I would say, relishes these kind of moments. It's where he really shines above other coaches, in my opinion, in terms of his ability to get a team ready for the postseason and have like his adjustments ready. And I think we've seen that across his time as Clipper head coach. So I'm really looking forward to tonight. I'm interested to see what the rotation looks like. Sort of going back to your point, I have a feeling that, yeah, we probably won't see Nicholas Batum, Bogdanovic. I think obviously it'd be if Isaiah Jackson is back, it looks like he might be. As you mentioned, he's been upgraded to questionable for tonight. It's probably going to be like a two in, two out situation where obviously Kawhi comes back, Isaiah Jackson comes back, which I think takes some minutes away from Nico and Bogdanovic. Unfortunately, I know that we've always spoken about a potential 9-man rotation. I think that still leaves you with 10. So again, I think it's just like a toss up between Jordan Miller and Kobe Sanders, who I think as of late have both been really important and really contribute. I think particularly Jordan Miller, to be honest, and I think just offers the Clippers something a little different that they don't have, particularly in that bench unit. He's obviously a little different to Benedict Mathurin in that he does have an outside shot, and I do trust his shooting a little bit more, but I don't think he's as like ball dominant as like Benedict Mathurin can be at times, particularly in terms of the number of shots he put up. I mean, even if you look back to Mathurin's performance against the Warriors the other night, he had 17 shots on the night, so that's a guy who's going to really demand the ball, but that's going to have to change when Kawhi comes back, right? So yeah, I don't think we can really read too much into that Warriors game other than I think it gives us like a good insight into in terms of their team. I think for like a Clippers point of view, it's going to be completely different. Like bring Kawhi back in, for example, we managed to win this without Kawhi. I don't think there's going to be much change in their lineup based on the injury report that I've seen. I got a little
I
worried.
think just
I don't know.
I was going to say I think just Draymond Green to come back into that
Yeah, it's
from
Draymond
that to
Green.
out the rotation. Yeah,
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I got a little worried. I thought, I don't know if this was real or not, or if I got done by one of those fake posts on X, but it seems like Jimmy Butler put something out to say like, oh, he was doubtful for this game, but he's out. So I don't know how true that was. I don't know if he put something on his Instagram to try and troll someone.
probably.
Um, but yeah, I was a little concerned that he might be back, but yeah, obviously he's out. He's injured, and it does sound like there is going to be significant minutes restrictions, even for this game, as there was in that previous game. I think Steph Curry only managed, what was it, like 28 minutes. He's obviously not going to touch 40. I think Steve Kerr said they're going to play less than 40. So like, what is that? Is that 39? Is that 38? Their season's on the line as well, but he can't, they obviously owe something to Steph to try and look after him. Obviously Porzingis, maybe, I feel like there's only so much they can push him, to be honest. And he's not been doing well, obviously for health reasons. I don't know if there's also like a fit with Steph. It just definitely seems like when they play, they haven't clicked too much. Maybe because they haven't played too many minutes together, but that hasn't worked out. Maybe I don't want to jinx anything. Maybe tonight's the night that both of them decide that they want to play basketball together. But yeah, I feel quite confident about tonight. I think the only thing that's like holding me back is just how the Clippers have been playing recently, particularly in those like really important games. And it feels like over the last few weeks we've had like a bunch of those where it's like, okay, like if we really want to finish in that preferred seeding spot to not face an elimination game right away, we need to start winning games. We obviously dropped two to the Pelicans. We obviously dropped that one to the Kings. We lost twice to the Blazers. So I don't think we've seen that like reliable consistency since that Timberwolves game. And that was a fair few weeks ago now. So that's the only thing, is I do feel like they're in a funk, but I think fortunately enough, the Warriors are in a similar position, and I think you could argue Phoenix Suns as well have been through a similar few weeks in terms of being up and down, players in and out of the roster. So yeah, I'm feeling good about tonight. I'm interested to see what kind of Benedict Mathurin we get. Obviously, like I said, decent performance against Warriors, 20 points sort of seemed like a return to form for him. But as I said, 17 field goal attempts, he's not going to get anything like that, is he? So I don't know what you think about his opportunity tonight to maybe like stake a claim. And I know he was really big for the Pacers as well. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Matherin's chances of being really effective in tonight's game and maybe getting over that slump? Because obviously that previous game was a step forward, we could say.
Yeah, I think it kind of has to be, and I think you saw from the Portland game with Ty only playing him for 5 minutes that he was probably kind of throwing the gauntlet down to him there, unless there was some kind of residual injury stuff going on. I'm not seeing any quotes to that effect, so it seemed to me like Ty just kind of put him out there for 5 minutes and decided that it was unsatisfactory what he'd seen from him, whether that was a matchup based thing, as we say, like it's probably a chance that he doesn't match up as well against Portland, but he's now got muscle memory of like at the very least playing against these Golden State Warriors players, maybe the spots that he can get to on the floor and things like that, and where the defense kind of opens up a little bit, even if it was a sort of small sample size because of the defenders, and even if you throw, the Warriors' best defender, Draymond Green, into that mix, there still should be, ways in which you can impact the game. And
Yeah.
one of those is the free throw line. Like as much as people sort of don't like to hear it, you just see like how the elite players do operate by getting to the free throw line. Like Denny Avdia has absolutely just schooled the Clippers on it recently over those two Portland games. Shea, one of the best players in the league, so good at getting to the free throw line. Like it is just a skill. It's not like a horrible part of the game that needs to be like stamped out, because I just don't think it ever will be. And so having a guy like Bennett Mathurin who is so good at that just does become like an asset to the Clippers, and that's one way I think he just can impact this game tonight. One thing that Golden State are very good at doing and have historically been, and like I just think it might just be in Steve Kerr's DNA as a coach, is that once they get hot, like it translates throughout the team. Like I've literally been in the building at TD Garden for when they won Game 6 of the NBA Finals in 2022, and just watched like basically how hot Steph Curry got led into how hot Jordan Poole got, or vice versa, I guess, depending on which way you want to look at it, because Jordan Poole was, so good that night. So I've watched, worse players than a guy like, well, I don't know, maybe Jordan Poole is more skilled than Brandon Pajemski, but I think there's a reason that Pods is still on the roster and Jordan Poole's not, and maybe that's just because Draymond Green decided he doesn't want to sock Pajemski in the face, but I just think like there's ways guys like him can get hot, sort of feeding off Steph and feeding off Steph's gravity in particular, where suddenly getting open shots in a way that you weren't until Steph got hot. So that's what the Clippers need to be careful of. But having a guy that can get to the free throw line slows that down, like means there's little breaks in play where the Warriors kind of have to, come back and recollect themselves and stuff. So Mathurin just like is a big asset to the Clippers, and yeah, like I mean, we'll do season reviews and stuff where we talk about what we think will happen with him in the summer. I'm still pretty
Yeah.
confident he'll get paid in the summer, albeit I think the money has probably gone down a couple of million, which I think is only a good thing for the Clippers based on what we've seen over the last few weeks of him, maybe. Based on the first few weeks, I think the Clippers were probably looking at it being like, oh God, we're going to have to really pay this guy. So I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to have to be the case necessarily anymore. I think you can get him on a more team-friendly deal now, but I still think there's loads
Yeah.
that he can, he can impact this game tonight and in the future for the Clippers. And then the same goes kind of like across the bench unit, really. Like you kind of imagine that John Collins slides back down into that tonight. He'll be really important off the bench. Kobe Sanders didn't have his best game against Portland either in terms of shooting. I think he was 0 for 4 from three, ends up going 1 of 2 against the Warriors, but just looking sort of all round better on and more comfortable on the floor. He's gonna have to turn up. Jordan Miller's gonna have to turn up again, as he seems to keep doing for the Clippers these days, because that bench scoring I just think is going to be important. I don't think the Warriors are the deepest team, but I think the one thing they will bring is points off the bench. So it's really important that the Clippers sort of turn up in that regard to make sure there's no discrepancy there. And listen, if the Warriors don't turn up in terms of their bench unit, then you can hammer home the point the minute that our bench unit comes in, because we do have guys that can get cooking there too. So
Yeah.
like a lot riding on it for a lot of those guys across the bench. I expect that the starters will turn up because it's postseason atmosphere and all those kinds of things. Like I would be very
Yeah.
surprised if you get like a bad shooting night from Kawhi Leonard or anybody like that. Brook
Not to mention
Lopez.
it's at Intuit Dome as well, right?
Yeah,
Like this is a
exactly.
home game.
Exactly, like the swell, I'm sure is going to help the players in this as well. I've already seen Grant Mona, friend of the show, has put a tweet out saying like Brook Lopez has turned up with some kind of like scythe from Masters of the Universe, something. So Brook is clearly like feeling it tonight. Skeletal Havoc staff, Grant's put it as. So yeah, Brook is clearly coming to play tonight as well. I'm sure he will turn up. Chris Dunn, in terms of energy, Darius Garland will be relishing these occasions because he kind of doesn't have the city on his back in a way that it felt like he did at times in Cleveland, albeit like not being the most important player on the roster, but it felt like all the sort of barbs in Cleveland were definitely directed towards Darius Garland. So he gets to play with a little bit more freedom for the Clippers tonight. And then I guess like if you're looking across the box score, the one player who you need to turn up better than you did last time is Derek Jones Jr. really,
Mm.
at least in terms of scoring. So loads that the Clippers can improve on from the last game and look towards, in terms of being able to rely upon it for this game. And loads of these guys have shown that they can stand up and they can be counted on throughout the sample size we've seen since the trade. So there's no reason for me to believe that like they won't do that tonight. Because as I say, this is a completely different challenge to Portland, OKC. If we do get there, Phoenix. If we do get there, challenges for another day. Like I'm having to try and stop my mind sort of traveling towards those because obviously it's just got to be what's in front of us tonight, and I'm sure that's exactly how the players will treat it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they've got a great opportunity to get into that second playing game and then ultimately the first round as well. And unfortunately for the team, it's going to be because of the situation they found themselves in, where it did feel like they may have clinched that eighth seed at some point. And we even were looking up to seventh. Is that this week is going to be a hell of a week if they manage to win both those games, because not only do they have the Suns waiting for them on Friday, the first round for whoever wins the second playing game will obviously be the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they'll be waiting on Sunday for whoever managed to get through those games. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. I did want to get your thoughts on Suns as well, because probably next time we record, either the Clippers are out tonight, either they're out Friday, or they're in the first round and they've already played a game. So the Suns are a team that the Clippers haven't played in this like quote unquote new era of Clipper basketball. I think last time they played them was actually a loss in Phoenix, but obviously that was a slightly different group. That was with James Harden, etc. So don't really know what to expect from this game. As I mentioned, the Suns have been like in a little bit of funk themselves in terms of players in and out of the lineup. I think they didn't even have Devin Booker last time we played. I will actually correct myself. It was actually a Clippers win in Phoenix, so maybe that's a good omen. The Clippers did have Ivica Zubac that night, who had 20 rebounds. Kawhi Leonard, who played well as well. So I'm not sure. I'm not too sure what to expect. I have a feeling it will be similar to the Warriors. I think they'll offer a bit more offensive consistency and threat because they just have more guys available. But again, going to have to go to Phoenix, and the Clippers have struggled in Phoenix, and particularly against the Suns over the last few years, particularly in the 2-1-3 eras. Just seemed like a common opponent for us, similar to the Denver Nuggets, where it does feel like we're always having to battle with them to get through the playoffs. And obviously at this point, we'll have to be the play-in. So if we are thinking towards next week, Josh, what are you thinking in terms of a potential matchup against the Suns? Obviously, it's not guaranteed with tonight's game, but how do you feel about that matchup going into it potentially on Friday?
Yeah, definitely better than I did if we were to play the Portland Trailblazers again. As I said, I think like Phoenix look a bit like one of those teams to me, like almost like sort of early days of Luka Dallas Mavericks teams where they've had a season that probably, well, no, definitely exceeded expectations. I'm more saying probably because probably those Dallas Mavericks ones did at the time in terms of how old Luka was and things like that, how inexperienced he was at NBA level. But they've been like hurt a lot of the season, and generally, like I keep saying, this is like part of the Luka Doncic experience, like from what you've seen with the Dallas Mavericks in the past. But Luka used to always go into the playoffs hurt because he'd be the one who'd kind of been like consistently healthy throughout the season while everyone else was going down and had to put the team on his back. And then by the time they get to the postseason, like he's just too hurt. And it kind of looked a little to me like that was the case with Devin Booker last night, like him not having his best game. I obviously know that Jalen Green still turned up and Dylan Brooks gave him the kind of production they've come to expect from Dylan Brooks now. But Jalen Green is streaky. Dylan Brooks is a tough shot taker, like has proven himself to be a bit of a tough shot maker as well this season, but there's every chance that could like dry up in a one-off game too. So there are things there that I'm like the Clippers could exploit that, but there's also parts where I'm like, the Clippers need to be really careful of this because, as I say, even though they're not as young and athletic as the Portland Trailblazers are, they still are like young and athletic, or younger and more athletic than the Clippers are. They're still a team that's in transition, but even with that, they've got guys who've hurt the Clippers in the past, like Devin Booker is a guy who's hurt the Clippers in the past. Royce O'Neal even is a guy who, like, sneakily from the outside has sort of hurt the Clippers in the past. Even this season, like I remember Oso Ighodaro having a great game for the Phoenix Suns in one of the losses to them. So that's the sort of almost like wild card or guy who kind of like sneaks under the radar that could turn up in a one-off game for Phoenix and really hurt the Clippers because he is just a bit younger and a bit more inclined to steal the odd offensive rebound here and there and stuff. So the Clippers will definitely need to like still be wary of the challenge, and I'm sure they will be, assuming that they do get through against the Golden State Warriors, which like we can't say is a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination, but they have every chance of getting through against the Warriors, and I think they'd have a fairly good chance of getting through against Phoenix. As I say, like it doesn't feel like Phoenix have been able to get through the season in the best like state in terms of health. Like at one point, they looked like they were a lock for the top six, and suddenly sort of fell away because those health issues did start to catch up with them. So it doesn't sort of talk down the job that Jordan Knott has done there over the course of the season. I think like he's in Coach of the Year talks for very good reason, really. Like they've far exceeded expectations, what anyone
Yeah.
thought they were going to be this season. But hopefully, as a Clippers fan, if we do get to the point of playing against them, this is kind of like the part where their race is run, and the Clippers can exploit that and kind of use that as a catapult then into the playoffs in terms of getting a bit of momentum.
Yeah, I think the good thing is they also found it hard to contain Denny Avdija as well. So um, just the fact that they obviously lost the Blazers makes me feel a little better about this game, albeit I think they had quite a good performance. Obviously, Jalen Green, 35 points. I think Devin Booker, not a typical Devin Booker game for him, but they definitely went toe to toe with the Blazers. They were obviously at home as well. They're gonna have an extra day of rest, so it's definitely not like to me like a clear win. But I think the Clippers should go into it, especially if they can get past the Warriors tonight. I think they should go into it with a lot of confidence in that they are, in my opinion, a lot deeper than the Phoenix Suns. I think they've got players that can contain the types of players that they've got who are threats, like Jalen Green, like Devin Booker. We've got guys who can throw them. And if it's Chris Dunn, if it's Derek Jones Jr., if it's Kawhi Leonard, and outside of that, I think if you can nullify those kind of threats, like there's not many others on that team who would worry me. I think Dylan Brooks has been great this season. We'll see what we get out of him if we are to play them in that game. But if the Clippers win tonight, it's one I'm fully going into expecting to win. And then ultimately, Josh, that leads us, if we are to get through it, as I think we're kind of predicting we are, first round, as you predicted, against the Oklahoma City Thunder, which I think you maintained for a while, and that it wouldn't be the San Antonio Spurs, it would actually be the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, this is obviously a potential matchup. Will have a lot of eyes on it for many reasons. Obviously, the history between the franchises, the trade, or the fact that Oklahoma City Thunder are reigning champions. The Clippers are obviously in a much different position than they were when they obviously originally made that trade with OKC. Obviously, they are, I think, very much similar to how they were in 2019 going into that playoff game against the Warriors, very much the underdog. And yeah, because obviously we will record next week, and if all goes our way, we'll probably know the first game's outcome by the time we sit down. What do you want to see out of that potential matchup? Because for me, like, I'm not expecting the Clippers to win. I think at the start of the season, if you told me the Clippers go out in the first round to Oklahoma City Thunder, I'm like, like that feels like something realistic or something that I could have imagined would have happened. I would have been probably shocked that the Clippers would have been the eight seed, right? But I think thinking about where the Clippers have come from this season, the moves they've made, etc. For me, like the expectation for that potential first round matchup would just be like seeing a competitive Clippers side, like in it, and if anything, like half as competitive as they were against the Warriors in 2019. Like if they even just put like half of the effort in, which obviously I don't think they're going to eclipse that. If they do, a hell of a successful season in my opinion. Even if they do go out, I just want to see something from that first round. Like if they get bounced out, fair enough. I think we could probably all see that come in. I don't think that's necessarily a failure given the context of the season. But yeah, what are you thinking about that first round matchup? Because obviously it's not going to be an easy one. And as I say, it is still potential. We won't know until Friday. But at least yeah, we can get some thoughts in, and then obviously revisit next week where hopefully we'll know the state of play.
Yeah, I think if we are sat here next week and the Clippers are in the playoffs, they've probably lost that game one heavily because of the big turnaround. Luckily, then
Yeah,
there's a bit more of a turnaround to game two, but still, we're you sort of speculating ahead here. Part of the reason that I was like kind of almost angling for the Oklahoma City Thunder matchup is that I think the Spurs one is like also a really bad one as much as the Thunder one is. I think the Clippers have lost like 7 times in a row to the Thunder, but the Clippers have also just been like such a roller coaster this season. It kind of feels fitting that it should finish with the team who at one point thought they were getting a lottery pick out of us and all the Shea stuff
yeah,
from the
that's so
past
true.
and things like that. And you're right to kind of compare it to that Warriors game. Obviously, there'll be the Warriors one didn't have that same kind of storyline going into it, but I could see a world in which like the Clippers do just kind of upset the Oklahoma City Thunder in a couple of games. If you equally turn to me and said like it will be a 4-0 sweep and the Thunder won't really have to break a sweat to do that, I could also see that being the case because the Clippers ultimately are a team that are in transition. But as you say, like I just do still think that's a successful season, even if the Clippers get swept in the first round, because the thing that you have to factor in is that the Clippers got assets for how much of a success they made of the middle of their season. Like
Yeah.
that lottery pick, we won't know until I think is that like the 10th of May or something. The lottery's on. Um, so
I
like
believe so.
it'll be all eyes on that date then for the Clippers to see where that ping pong ball falls from Indiana's point of view, whether that pick does go to us. But the Clippers even getting assets out of this season, getting guys like Darius Garland and potentially Benedict Mathurin who they can hang their future on. I'm even going to start including Isaiah Jackson in that because I kind of wasn't for a long time because I wasn't sure whether he would contribute very much. And there's still a world in which like he could be out of the rotation when we come around to next season if the Clippers made a few more moves around the edges, which I expect them to do. But there's still every chance that he is someone who can come in and contribute to the Clippers. And by the sounds of it, from sort of people I've spoken to around the Clippers organization and journalists who've been at games and stuff, like he's a really like pleasurable person to deal with as well. So would definitely be like rooting for him to be a success for the Clippers in the future. So like even if it is a sweep, I'm not going to be like having Clippers fans getting clowned online and stuff for losing to the best team in the NBA. Like that's like it just shouldn't ever be a thing really. I'm quite excited to be going into it like with a few more narratives to boot because it just feels like that's always the way with the Clippers. Like there's always some kind of thing, some kind of angle that
Yeah.
like people can look at the team from, and I don't mind that. Like as I said in the last podcast when I did my sort of big underdog speech, like it's kind of the way the Clippers have been forever. So like, why break the habit of a lifetime, really? Yeah, I'd still be going into that like full of excitement for that matchup, even if it's a matchup that's like heavily favors the Oklahoma City Thunder. I just say like bring that on because if you're not in basketball for like the Clippers playing against the best teams, and like I don't really know what you're in basketball for. Yes, it's a weakened version of the Clippers based on what we'd have thought maybe at the start of this season or at basically any other point during the season really before the trades. But like that is all the more reason for the Clippers to go into it as underdogs, and all the more reason for the Clippers to shock the world really, even if it is just stealing 2 games off them like they did with that Golden State series.
I think we all remember the Golden State series, obviously not because the Clippers got bounced out, but because of the performance they put in. And we do that because we know the context of the team at the time. Like we knew this was the underdog. We knew we were the underdog going in, but the fact that we obviously took the games we did from a team that ultimately like, and I think still you can look back on as like one of the best like constructed teams of all time, the team that added Kevin Durant already, what was like an absolute dynasty. And obviously, yeah, like in my opinion, that was one of the best like playoff experiences I've had watching the Clippers, even though they obviously did get bounced out by the Warriors. So if they can offer me something like that in the first round, like I'm all here for it. I'm sure everyone in the franchise, including the players, are going to be well up for it as well because they hear the outside noise, they know the history between the teams, and no one will know it more than Kawhi Leonard, who was actively involved at the time in trying to convince the Clippers to bring some more help in. Obviously, that ended up being with the Oklahoma City Thunder, who are now the reigning champions. So if there's no incentives to try and do something. I completely agree about Sunday. I would not. I'd be shocked next week, Josh, if we've won all three potential games. Like how I'm here for it, but I really don't expect that. I think if anything, and if that was to happen, maybe it's like just the momentum of continuing to play. And but the focus will just be continuously shifting between different opponents. I can't see it, and I wouldn't be surprised. But you know, I'm here to see something, Josh, and I really would love to take even a couple games, even just one game from Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, let's just see what we've got with this group, and I think that's just been like how the expectation has shifted from the very start of the season. As I said, if I was to understand where we are today at the very start, like I wouldn't be too mad to then be 6-21, finding out that we might be we have the potential to be in the first round. Like you would absolutely take that. So I think context is absolutely key here, given the moves we've made. And like I said, there are things that have been done this season outside of playing basketball that have put the Clippers in good favor for seasons to come. And maybe this obviously season isn't the one where we're going to be a contender, as Kawhi has obviously openly admitted, but he's been pleasantly surprised with the group that they put together, and he knows it's not the final deal. Kawhi's obviously been playing some of his best basketball, so I'm really intrigued to see that over at least tonight, and then hopefully more games to come. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm hopeful, and I agree with you. I think we probably will be sat here next week talking about that first round matchup, and if we don't, then yeah, it'll probably be a bit of a season review. I know we've promised we'll do a bit of a look forward as well. Obviously, like key dates we've got to look towards, as you mentioned, May 10th is the lottery for the Clippers, where they still really they have a 50-50 chance of getting first round pick. I think that changes the Clippers short term picture dramatically. Obviously, if it doesn't convey, we can discuss that further in an upcoming pod. But yeah, any final thoughts on this week's episode, Josh? Because it can all change. It can all change. Even tonight, like it's an elimination game. And although I am excited, I am hopeful, I am feeling nervous. So how are you feeling? And any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Similar to you, really. Like it's a combination of emotions, isn't it? Like I'm kind of going into it having realigned my expectations about where this team is at, and I don't think they were like highly inflated expectations anyway. It was just that I thought they were a bit closer to a team like Portland, for example, and I'm kind of realizing like they're even a rung below that. But I think the next two teams they face, and I mean that's in like this very specific version of the next two teams they face with the context of what we've seen over the past few months, especially. They probably both feel like they're a rung below Portland as well. So I just say like bring it all on. Like again, if you can't enjoy this part of the season as a Clippers fan or as a basketball fan in general, then I'm not sure what part of the season you can enjoy. Like we've unfortunately had the back end of this NBA season like punctured with all this like tanking, and then the tanking talk and discourse that's like come along with it, which I think has just like robbed us of one of probably the best NBA seasons that I can remember watching as a whole. Like the
Yeah.
teams, the talent across all the teams, and I even include the tanking teams in this, which is why it makes it more of a shame that so many of them were tanking. The talent across like all teams is up there with the best I've ever seen in my lifetime in the NBA. So it's been an incredible season. Like we should all, neutrals, Clippers fans, whatever alike, should all enjoy this part of the season now, because it doesn't get better than this. And we there'll be some tanking discourse, I'm sure, sort of happening in the background, but also real basketball with teams trying to win is happening in the foreground. So let's just focus on that and enjoy as much of it as we have left as Clippers fans.
Absolutely, mate. And like I said, we were 6-21 at one point. Like we were down bad. We were coming on this pod week after week, Josh, talking about how depressing it was watching the Clippers lose week after week. But now we've got a real opportunity to start winning games against competitive teams, teams like the Warriors, who have star players like Steph Curry, or even Phoenix Suns, who are obviously going through a rebuild, but still looking to win. And then with the opportunity to go into the first round of the playoffs with this new look Clippers side. So I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited to watch these games and fingers crossed for tonight. I'm feeling hopeful. I think we're both feeling hopeful. I'm interested to see where we are next week and what we're discussing, and I'm starting to feel like it will be sort of reviewing some of the at least the first game of that Thunder series when it comes around. But yeah, really enjoyed this one, Josh. As I said, nervous for tonight. Fortunately, not one. I don't know if you're planning on staying up for it, but not one. I'm gonna unfortunately just have to leave to the rest of Clipper Nation and the Clipper players to get done because yeah, it's gonna be a morning watch for me. Is this one you're gonna stay up for?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the like go to bed and then try and wake up for it. So that usually kind of starts to fail around half time because obviously it's a bit of like a break in play. Your
Yeah.
adrenaline just like drops a bit, and that's usually the time around when I'll fall asleep. But I'm gonna try everything I can to stay up for it because if it's the last game of the Clippers season, then I feel like I kind of have to, having been here for the whole journey, I'm gonna have to kind of stick with them to the bitter end of it. So yeah, I'll be waking up for it.
You've convinced me, Josh. You've convinced me. I'm finding a way to watch this game. If anything, obviously being in the UK, and obviously we do have a lot of UK listeners who, to be fair to them, a lot of them do stay up and obviously commend them for doing so. It's a 3 a.m. game our time. I might just wake up for the second half and just see how it ends. Just get at least I'll have a bit of time to catch up with the game and still enough time to get some sleep in after. So yeah, that's it. I'm watching it. You've convinced me, Josh. I can't list the potential Clippers final game of the season, and I have a feeling it's gonna be a good one. So as I said, enjoy this episode. Thanks everyone for listening, watching. I know Josh, you're going to be. I don't know if you've put it out already, but you're planning on putting out an episode with one of Clipper's own media members, Justin Russo, to remind everyone where they can find that if they can't find it already. When that might be dropping.
Yeah, that's part of my Crossover the Pond podcast with Drew Lasker, who's an NBA analyst. I've talked about it a couple of times on this podcast this season, but just in case anybody new is listening, we got an interview with Justin Russo, which was great, looking back over the whole of this season and how, Justin even himself admits, and Justin is probably like one of the best go-to people for, Clippers insight and stuff. He even admits like it wouldn't surprise him if the Clippers just managed to find their way into that first round matchup against the OKC Thunder and to give them a bit of a fright too. So yeah, really good listener if you are a Clippers fan. So I recommend you go over to the Crossover the Pond YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts and go and seek that out. And then I'm Jay Sexton 24 across all socials as well if you want to follow me and look out for my NBA analysis, whether it's calling LaMelo Ball a lunatic or cheering on the Clippers.
Love it, mate. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be checking that out. Really, really interested to hear what Justin's got to say. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening and watching again. Really looking forward to tonight. Feeling nervous, but I think we get it done. Go Clips, go.